Welcome to the first episode of the StoneLine Climbing Podcast. In this one we chat to Dom Rowe and we answer a bunch of questions about climbing performance and really try and get into a bit of the nuance of some of the questions that we're asked. We're about to launch our first online bouldering course, Mastering Stone, which delves really into the nuance of everything that's not the physical aspect of climbing. We're talking tactics, psychology, approach to climbing, philosophy of climbing, and really trying to help you level up your climbing in a way that's sustainable, enjoyable, and really makes you want to do it for years to come. Thanks to Dom for being on this first episode. Hopefully there's more to come.
When you're nearing your physical limit on a project, how do you differentiate between needing more strength versus needing better movement economy?
That's actually quite a hard question, because I think a lot of the time it is actually hard to tell whether I need to be stronger or I need to be more efficient. I think some of the time it's not necessarily even about being more efficient or economical with your movement. It's actually just being better with your movement and finding a way to do a move that you didn't envisage before. And that's not necessarily more economical. It's just smarter, isn't it? It's just an easier way to do that move.
I think for me, when I know I'm at my physical limit on a project and I'm getting close to either sending it or I need to redefine my beta, I always have that extra session to do the moves again, just to understand what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, have videos of every single move, how I do it, and just have that understanding of what I'm doing in order for me to nail it, basically.
I think that's a big part of it, isn't it? Is actually, if you constantly have videos of yourself doing the moves, you can ask yourself, is there an easier way for me to do this? Or this move looks quite difficult, how can I actually is there a way I can make that move easier? I think when you don't have video of yourself trying the climb, it's much harder to visualize the difficulty of a move. Does it feel easy? Does it feel hard? So I think, reviewing footage of yourself climbing, I think is that really useful way to just constantly be looking at yourself climbing and saying, is there a way I can make this easier? Is there a way I can make that easier? I spend a couple of seconds too long here or a couple of seconds too long there. How can I kind of trim that?
And when you're at your physical limit, sometimes you ain't gonna do what everyone else does.
Yeah.
Just because someone else has beta of doing something doesn't mean that's gonna be your beta of doing something. Sometimes you have to find new ways in order to do something that is within your limits and not within other people's limits.
Yeah.
In outdoor settings where conditions play a huge role, how do you decide whether to push through marginal days or wait for perfect ones?
Oh, I can answer this. I
think we can both answer this. For me, I think the big thing with this is what time you have actually available to you. Because it's all well and good a professional climber who can climb 4 days a week saying, I'll just wait today, not try, come back next week, try again. I think that works for them because they have the opportunity to just come back any other day. If you can only get outside 1 or 2 days a week, is it really worth you saying, nah, I'm going to go and have a session in the gym instead and then come back on a day where it's really good conditions? I don't think so. I think for the majority of people who get 1 or 2 days of climbing outside a week, I think their time is way better spent trying that thing in bad conditions and learning the kind of intricacies of the boulder itself and rock climbing, rather than saying I'm going to have a gym session instead. And okay, you may get more benefit physically from that training session, but you're not, I think, going to get all of the IQ things and the skills that you need from the actual session on the project. That's what I think. But it depends on the person, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's person to person. For me on my project that I was trying, Hydro, you have to know when to call it quits as well because of the conditions. When you've been climbing in certain conditions and you're like, wow, this is perfect. Okay, it's good to be able to do the moves in suboptimal conditions, but that doesn't mean you can always do them. And then at which point are you just thrashing yourself on a problem and it's not actually doing you any good being there. So I think sometimes you have to do as well, learn to call it quits on a problem and not just go for it just because you feel like you have to. Like the boulder's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not like, unless it does get blown up, and it's actually not going anywhere.
Pretty rare.
So
Yeah.
you haven't got to worry about anything resetting, you know.
Wait for these people.
Some doggies coming past. No, you're fine. No, don't be sorry.
It's all good.
But I do agree with your point though about like, you know, if you haven't got much time to get out, then you should just get out as much as possible, and you probably you will benefit more just being there on the boulder, even if it can sometimes be frustrating or painful.
Yeah, I think for me, it depends a lot on the project you're trying. If you're trying something that you know is very friction dependent or conditions dependent, you need like dry skin, or you need like really the hole's in really good condition, then yeah, obviously you think about, okay, maybe I can turn up, I don't need to try this day, I'll go and try something else, or I'll go and have a training session and then come back when the weather is that good. But yeah, I think for me there, it really depends on who you are and how much access you've got to rock.
And I think it's like important to have like not just that one project.
You
have like another one, so that if it's not in condition, you have something to fall back on.
You got a plan B.
Whereas if you just have plan A, don't have B, C, and D, then you just end up being stuck in a trap. Yeah. Which I can say that I put myself in a trap sometimes.
Yeah, me too. And you end up doing way less climbing then, and just you're resting for that one thing, and not necessarily making improvements that you can make because you're just constantly conserving for that one thing.
Or you do what we just talked about, and you just end up going inside, which most of the time we don't really want to go inside. We'd rather be outside, but because you just, or me anyway, I'm just so indecisive. If I don't have a plan A, B, and C, then I'll just end up faltering to going inside, which is something I usually don't like doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How has your approach to projecting changed over time, especially regarding patience, ego, or your relationship with failure?
Yeah, I think over time my experience of projecting has changed from one that was very pressure oriented to one that is more relaxed. Obviously there's differences in there between projecting at home, where you're much less worried about time constraints and you're much less pressure generally, and then there's climbing trips where you have a week or 10 days or 2 weeks to actually do a boulder, and you know if you don't do it you might not be coming back for 6 months, a year, 2 years, depending on where it is. So I think for me it's changed a lot in that I can think back 10 years ago when I climbed Riverbed in Magic, which was my first 8B. That was probably one of the most stressful projecting experiences that I've ever had, because I knew it was my first of a grade. I was on a trip. The trip was going to come to an end pretty quickly after, and yeah, I desperately wanted to do that boulder. Kind of fast forward 10 years, and the experiences I have now projecting stuff is way more relaxed. I think just because I'm much more able now to think about the prospect of not doing the boulder, accepting it and saying there's another opportunity at some point to come back and do this boulder. And I think maybe that's like an experience thing, but I also think it's something that I have had to actually try and practice that feeling of not caring or not really feeling stressed over whether I would do the boulder or not. I don't know if it's been similar for you.
I mean, for like my, the first 2 years for me, it was definitely like very pressurized in terms of like very like a different type of pressure that I would put on myself. But I think, spending the last 2 years being like on and off injured all the time, I think it's made me reevaluate like what I see as pressure. And
so the situations maybe that you felt were putting pressure on you before, you don't feel those anymore?
I don't feel it as much anymore, because typically now I'm on trips with people that I've always been on trips with people that I like, but now I just see it as I'm away, I'm doing something that most people would love to do. I'm out in the mountains. I get to have time off work. I get to just be away. Yes, it can be frustrating to walk away empty-handed. You know, I walked away from our Switzerland trip without doing I potici, as they say in Italy. And, you know, that can be frustrating, but, you know, the fact that I was injured for a year and a half before that, and that I was there, and I had the best trip I've ever had, and I was almost able to do it, which would have been my hardest boulder day, then I can always see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
And I think the fact you came away from that trip still happy with what you've done and still pleased with the trip, I think is really, really good and important. And I think the thing that you said there at the start is almost like an abundance mindset of, I'm not in work, I'm in an amazing place climbing with, you know, friends and really cool people. And I think if you try and treat climbing trips like that, I think they generally, you set them up for success much more. Yeah. Whereas if you have this, I think, pressure of, I want to do X boulder and Y boulder, and we always do. The problem is we always, we go to Rocklands now, and you've got X, Y, and Z boulder that you've seen you want to do. I've got X, Y, and Z boulder. But I think if you try and think about the trip first as like an experience and, something that you can enjoy culturally, you can enjoy, food, or you can enjoy whatever it is, just being in a place with other people in somewhere new and exciting, and the climbing you almost see as like this bonus thing, then suddenly I found the climbing trips just get way more successful because your expectations are low, and you're already looking at it as like a success just going. Yeah. So the climbing then becomes like a bonus.
And I think my trip in 2023 with Leo and Arlo, like that was like a big turning point for me as well. I was getting like way too egotistical in myself and with the people I was around. So it was nice to, not nice, but it was sort of nice to have that experience of like, oh, you're being a bit of a cock. You're treating people poorly. Because of all this pressure I'd put on myself to climb 8B within a certain time frame, trying to please other people rather than trying to please myself. That pressure just got to me, but like I'm also thankful that happened as well, because it's made me into a better person, and it's like made me realize that it's actually important to have fun with the people you're with rather than be serious and
be miserable all the time.
Be miserable all the time and just be unhappy. And
it's very easy to get into that though. I think when because the thing is we acknowledge that we want to do certain things within our climbing and we work towards doing them. But then when we're actually in the experience of trying to do them, it's very easy for the stress and anxiety and pressure to build and build and build and take you out of the feeling of just enjoying being where you are and doing what you're doing. And I think, that's maybe one of the things that I've learned the most, and one of the things that makes me more relaxed on climbing trips now is just being able to detach the two, like the success of, or the feeling of trying to succeed on something, detaching that from the rest of the climbing trip, and just reminding myself really, like, if I don't do this boulder, it's not the end of the world. If I don't do that boulder, it's not the end of the world. There's always,
once you do it, guess what happens? You move on and you think of the next thing.
It becomes the next one. You succeed on one, and then you're like, I've succeeded on that, and now I'm happy. You're happy for 5 minutes, and then you want to do the next one.
You've done your like little Instagram post, you're happy, and then you just move on to the next boulder that you get frustrated on and happy and feel all the feelings.
Cycle repeats, like.
The cycle just repeats. So why not just enjoy where you're at and what you're doing while you're there?
Can you describe a moment where a subtle technique change, such as hip angle or breath timing, made a breakthrough possible?
For sure. For me, an easy one is from Dirt Grows the Flowers, was that I was getting to the mantle every go and just falling off on the mantle for kind of like foot would slip or just wouldn't be able to get far enough over on my foot or whatever it was. And I remember thinking, like, I'm not breathing. And I remember thinking, right, okay, I'm going to get to the point that I've kind of noted here is the spot where I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to take a big deep breath and see if that changes anything. And it did, and it was like, I think a couple of goes later or whatever that I did it. And in the video I've looked at of the Sen, you can see my chest kind of do this, where I just take this big deep breath. And that for me is like, I think that's something I constantly remind myself to do. And when I watch videos of like people that I work with, a lot of the time you can tell when people aren't breathing, and you can just see like this sort of, almost they start rushing. The speed that they're climbing at goes up, and the reason the speed increases is because they're like, I'm getting tired, and they're getting tired because they're not breathing. And I think that's another common thing of like, even people that train in who are fit and have done like lots of power endurance work or are really fit on a project, they'll say, I'm getting pumped. I'm not pumped. I'm not boxed in my forearms, but I'm like feeling like I'm powered out. Yeah. And then you watch a video of them climbing, and you turn the sound on, and you're like, there's not a single breath in there. So that was for sure a big one for me.
I think when I'm teaching like leading work, like that's the one thing I try and teach people is like, you know, if you don't breathe, you just start panicking. If you start panicking, your body starts shutting down. If your body starts shutting down, well, you're going to fall off the boulder or fall off the route, or you're going to struggle to make that clip, you know. Breathing has definitely been like a big part of my climbing as well. And I always try and emphasize to like, if I feel like I'm getting stressed, just take a deep breath before you do that move. Yeah. And usually it just calms you down and makes you think about what you're doing. And makes you rethink. It's
a bit of a reset a lot of the time, isn't it, on a boulder? Like, you know, I try and do it sometimes on top outs. Like if I'm, you know, I can get to like a jug. Sometimes you'll have a hard section of climbing, you get to a jug, and then you've got to do a top out, and it's like, okay, get to the jug. Yeah.
Take a second.
I mean, you could just change your rhythm, or you can just take a couple of big deep ones, or whatever it is.
Because you know, it's like the top out is probably something you've done 1,000 times, like at the end of the session or at the start of the session to warm up. So you know that you can just hang on those holds and just chill and just like get your mind right before you start like rushing it and then evidently falling off. You know?
I think that's a fairly common thing you see actually, is people may get to that jug rest, and instead of just taking a second or two to like compose themselves and take a big breath, they rush in and then subsequently like fall off the top because they rushed and because they didn't just take that second to like compose. I mean, we just went straight into breath, or I went straight into breath, but I don't think I can hip change. I mean, that's definitely, you know, like a body position thing. Plenty of times I think you find a body position shift makes a difference to what you're doing. Usually, some of the time I won't see it through the lens of body position. I'll see it through the lens of using my foot or my hand in a different way first. And then I think what you realise is, right, if I change where my heel is or I change where my toe is, it then changes where my hip is. Yeah. So sometimes it's not, I don't always, maybe it's just like I'm not thinking about it in the right way. But a lot of the time the heel or the toe or the hand or the foot position will come first and the hip position will lead off that. Yeah. But I think as long as you're then thinking about the hip position, that my hips actually moved as a result of that, I think that makes you more conscious then, or aware of it's actually my hips, not necessarily my foot or my hand that needs to change.
You gotta remember as well, like climbing is a full body sport, you know, it's not just you can move one hand, one foot and that's just the end all be all, you know, you need to be able to move your hips, your knees, your legs, your fucking, you know, your ass as well, you know, you gotta be able to move every element of your body in order to get into a good position. The one that I remember is back in Switzerland in 2022 with you, when I was doing Foxy Lady 8A. And I could do, so it was like, you go into like a Gaston crack over and then roll to a crimp. And I could do it in isolation every single time. And then
the move right hand up to the crimp.
Yeah, the right hand up to the crimp. And I was like, fuck, God, I could do that every single time. And then just like, every time I'd go from the start, I was like, I would just drop it every single time. It was almost like I couldn't even make the move. And I was like, so I recorded all my sessions. And then I was just in bed late one night. And I was just like looking through all my videos. And I was like, I know what I'm not doing. I'm like not standing on my feet properly. Like I'm like basically standing on my heel and my entire foot rather than my toe. Yeah. And the go that I would do in isolation, I would like stand on my toe and like be more direct with my feet and then do the move. And then once I changed that, I did like pretty much did it
Do you think that was like a distance thing with your toe, or do you think it was a control thing? Like you had more control and feeling off the toe than you just had off like the whole foot?
I would say a control thing.
Control, yeah.
It was like, you know, and it makes sense because like, you know, you can't get it, like you could barely get any tension if you're just holding with your heel and your foot on the wall. Okay, it might be a bit more stable, but you're not going to be able to generate this tension through your body. By standing like that. And that was like a big step, and that allowed me to then do the boulder and put me into a good position that I ended up putting myself in.
Yeah. Nice.
How do you translate indoor training gains to unpredictable outdoor environments with variable holds, rock, texture, and mental pressure?
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I think for me it's always thinking about making the training you do inside as close to the climbing you do outside as you can. So, you know, I think in general it's like, what's the best way to get good at rock climbing?
Let's go rock climbing.
Go rock climbing. But I think...
And that's undervalued as well.
Yeah,
I think people
for sure,
don't
massively.
understand that, like,
we're in a
confidence on rock is like is massive.
Huge.
Like that, like, you know, was it 2023 when we had like really bad weather constantly, and like we
and
just
2024.
And you know, we were just inside for like months and months and months, and then when I went outside, like I was like scared. I was like, you know, everything was like brand new again. I was like, God, my confidence is gone. You know, everything is shot.
Climbing IQ, I think, is one of those things that when you build it and you get it, you've almost forgotten the building of it, and you've forgotten how much of it you've gained. And then when you have those periods, maybe 5-6 months with very little rock climbing, and then suddenly go back to climbing outside, you experience exactly what you did. And I've had this loads of times where you're like, yeah, I'm scared, my confidence is gone, my execution's gone, all of these things. So I think it's really easy to not see the value in climbing outside and thinking, well, I can just train and get stronger and then go climbing outside, and I'll be able to do the stuff that I can't do now. And I think actually the bigger thing is to go climbing with some intention. And
that doesn't mean like going straight on to like your hardest project.
No, exactly.
You might need to like lower the level, and you know, and maybe it's, you know, for me, like I find it hard sometimes to lower the level, and not because like I don't appreciate it. It's just because I like pushing myself. But you should, like, that should be something that we all do, is just lower the level, get used to climbing on rock again, placing pads, falling on pads. You know, learning, getting your IQ back up to where you're thinking about moves without like actually thinking about it, or doing moves without thinking about it.
You get more, I think, in a habit of making moves and not kind of not fearing falling off, or not. You almost get in a habit of not falling off. That's the nice thing. Like the rhythm becomes to climb rather than to fall. You're not necessarily trying moves. You're just making moves and doing things.
And it's so different falling inside than it is falling outside. Like I'll fall so much easier inside than I will outside. You know, I'll think a lot less about it.
So I think then in terms of thinking about how you transfer the stuff that you would do inside to climbing outside, I think a lot of the time for me it's making the stuff that I do inside as realistic. So if I'm going to project outside, I'm going to try and maybe do some projecting inside, like on a board or something. If I'm going to go outside and try and climb 3 or 4 boulders in a day that are, you know, kind of just above my base level or around my base level, I'm going to try and do the same thing in an indoor climbing session, whether it's a board session. Like, how often do you go outside and climb 20 boulders?
No,
pretty rare.
No.
But how often do we or people do that inside? Quite a lot. You're actually not often, you know, you're doing something inside that you're not really going to do outside. And why? Because the access is there, because there's a nice yellow there, and this pink looks good, and that blue's really cool, and like, you know, it's
also fun as well. You know?
It is fun, and that's the thing. They're there, aren't they? And it's like, it leads you into doing it, and that's what indoor climbing walls do really well, is that volume and having so many things that are so good. But I think in reality, how beneficial is that style of session for what you're going to go and do outside? Not particularly. Are you really then focusing on individual moves or nuance of moves, or trying to put together an 8-move sequence, or put together 3 or 4 boulders in a session that you would do outside. You're not, I think, a lot of the time. And that's, I think, the problem with a lot of generic indoor climbing, is that there's less intention to it, there's less specificity to it, and as a result, you kind of you go outside and you don't have any of the skills that you actually need.
Yeah. But you do something that I wish I did more, and that's like set replicas on your board.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like you said, you just do that over and over and over again, and then guess what? That transfers to what you're doing outside, because you're trying to do the moves that you want to do outside, rather than just doing, like you said, 100 boulders in a climbing center.
The nuance is there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're trying less moves, you're trying moves nearer your limit, you're trying moves that have a similar feeling to the ones that you're gonna try on whatever that project is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I need to get better at, is setting replicas and just trying them over and over again. I'm the one who likes doing 100 boulders in a
Yeah. It's so easy to do though, isn't it? That's the problem.
It's so fun.
It's fun.
I love climbing. I just love climbing. So like climbing on blocks is just like fun to me. And I know that I would rather not do it when the weather's good. So when I can do it, I just try and take advantage of it.
And it's nice as a warm up, isn't it? I think if you're sensible and you limit it to being a warm up or a cool down, then, you know, as long as there's some kind of, I think, some structure to that middle part of your session there that's more specific to what you're going to do on rock, then I think it's fine.
But I also love board climbing as well. Like, God, it's so fun.
And that's great, because it's like the most specific thing you can do.
Do you use video analysis for climbing outside? If so, what specifically are you looking for when reviewing your footage?
So, all I do, that's pretty much if I were to show you my phone, God, there'd be so many videos on my phone. I mean, you've seen them. I've got like maybe 6,000 like photos and videos on my phone, and most of that is just like of me climbing. And I will, after every single session, like the Bacon Oil project that I'm trying now, and the one that I was trying last year, all I've done since it's open now is look at those videos, analyze what I did, try and figure out like nuances of what I did then. So then when I go into my session now, hopefully I spend less time figuring it back out again, because obviously Bacon only opens up for 6 months, so it's closed for 6 months.
So do you find then, like, if you've got those videos on your phone, like I've seen you watch them in the night and I've seen you watch them in the morning or whatever and just wake up and watch them, if you're doing that, are you kind of using that to watch those videos before the session to then have like a plan for the session of like, I need to refine this, or I need to refine that, or I'm going to change this, or I'm going to change that?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both really. So like it's just putting the moves in my head so that when I get to the session, I already know how to do them again without having to figure them out, because I remember my beta by looking at the videos. And then, it's like I'm looking at, which part of this problem am I struggling with the most? Because whatever the part I'm struggling with the most, well, I'll warm up on all the other moves, and then I'll go back to that and just redefine that element of the problem, you know. And then I'll try and just hone in on that, get it better, and maybe I'll spend like an entire session on trying to make that better. But to me, that's worth it if it means that I send it the next session.
I think that's quite an important thing, isn't it? Is like using the videos, yes, from like a technical element, but also I think from a confidence building perspective of just seeing yourself do the moves and link the sequences. And I think sometimes it's hard to find a balance a little bit, because you're watching videos of yourself sometimes where you're not doing a move and you're trying to understand, okay, what do I need to do that move? Yeah. But then I think it's tricky to find a balance between doing that where you're watching yourself kind of fall, and then watching the videos maybe where you just, let's say, link a boulder in two halves, and instead of watching yourself then fall off, you're watching yourself succeed and do the sequences.
But you know, even with the falling off element, you know, that's just part of it. I when I see myself falling off, I never get frustrated by looking at it or anything. Okay. I'm more just thinking, okay, there's improvement to be made. I need to, whether that's training or whether that's just movement in myself, you know, like there's no point getting frustrated over it. It's like, it's happening. You just got to learn to deal with it. And like try and figure out what it is that's making you fall off.
That's the big thing, isn't it? Actually like trying to analyze, okay, what am I doing wrong? Yeah.
And sometimes it can be maybe you're just like a little bit weak because of dealing with an injury, or maybe it's, you know, you haven't been outside as much as you wanted to. Like there's some element of it, and it all comes down to you, and that's the underlying thing, is that it is you, and you need to like look at yourself, be comfortable with recording yourself.
That's another big thing. I think that's a part of the reason a lot of people don't do it. I mean, I can understand a lot of the time why people don't do it in indoor climbing walls. They're busy, there's people around, you don't want to be kind of, you know, you're not going to set up a tripod and do this stuff.
Also, like, you don't need to set up a tripod.
No, but you can like put in a shoe.
You can do it nonchalantly and just like put it on your shoe, or just like not even on your shoe, like chalk bags these days. Yeah. God, it's so good that you can just like rest them against the chalk bag, and no one's going to know that you're recording. And if they are, nobody cares anyway.
No.
So.
And I think normalising it for yourself is like the first step, isn't it? Yeah. I think that's where a lot of people don't get to that stage where it is normal, where they just do it automatically, or ask their mate, "Oh, can you hold this for me just for a minute while I have this go?" I think the quicker you get to that point, the easier it becomes, and it just becomes normal. You just do it as something you do without thinking about. You don't have to think about it. That's part of your session. Yeah, and I think that's really useful.
If I didn't like video analyze myself in 2022 in Switzerland, I wouldn't have got up. You know, maybe I would have got lucky and got up Foxy Lady, but probably not. And then I probably wouldn't have climbed 8A as fast as I climbed 8A. You know, it's you have to be willing to like take that step and just like be okay with watching yourself fall off, and just deal with it and just. Yeah, try and learn from it as much as you can.
The quicker you can do it, the better, really.
Yeah.
So,
what role does creativity play in solving outdoor problems? How do you keep your movement approach open and adaptive rather than mechanical?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think.
Hang on, ask that again.
Yeah, ask that again.
What role does creativity play in solving outdoor problems?
Let's stop there. I think a pretty big role. I think if you are average Joe who's 5'9" with a decent wingspan, a lot of the time you can watch a video of average Jim climbing the same boulder and say, I'm going to copy average Jim's sequence. I think a lot of the time being short or being, really, really tall can be the catalyst to encourage you to be more creative, because a lot of the time what conventional beater is for a boulder you can't do. So I think creativity plays like a massive role for me, even though I will always default to doing what the generic sequence for a boulder is. I think you need to always be willing, and I try to always be willing to adapt and do something different. A lot of the time that'll be, I can see a hole there that nobody's using, it's slightly thinner, suits my style, I'll use that. Or there's a really high foot that I can kind of get on that I can't, because I can't reach the low foot. So I'm going to do that. I think the number of times that I've written off boulders only to go back to them years later with more like creativity and more willingness to try other stuff, I've realised, oh man, that wasn't beyond me. I just needed to think a little bit further.
I think sometimes as well, like some people just are naturally more creative. Like they will just naturally want to think of other ways of doing things. Like for me, this bacon, like when I did High Society, like the end sequence, everyone does it like the drop-in move a specific way where they just bone on the toe, drop in, is proper strength. I can do that. I still can't do that. So I had to find a way to like make it work for my climbing needs, you know, and okay, I could get stronger, but like that's just a long-term fix, you know. If I want to do it now, I have to find a way to make me want to do it now, and that's by finding new beater. Like I think I walked my feet through, got like a toe hook that nobody else used, and it allowed me to statically come into this hold, whereas everyone throws into this hold, and it looks a bit more powerful.
And I think a lot of the time the hard thing with those things, those creative things, is seeing them. Sometimes they're quite hard to see, and sometimes someone will suggest something to you, like, "Oh, try this or try that," and you think, "That's not gonna work," and then you try it and it works. I think some of the time you just need to. I found that I'll try, maybe 5 things, and one of them will work. But the more you try stuff, I think the more you see what will work and what won't work.
How do you handle external pressure, like social media, filming sends, or climbing in front of peers, and stay focused on the climb itself?
God, I struggle with this a lot.
Big question.
I struggle with this big time.
Yeah. I mean, each of those things, external pressure, social media and stuff, that's definitely hard, I think. I know a lot of people who try and turn it off and don't necessarily look at Instagram or delete it or use it really regularly.
I've deleted it in the past.
Yeah, fine if that works for you.
But I know that's not always the answer.
Yeah, I try not to do that. I feel a little bit like it's running away from the problem rather than sort of confronting it a bit. I try and, for me at least, I try and say, okay, it's there. I don't necessarily, does it feel bad to maybe have a period of time where you don't do anything and you're like, well, I've got nothing to post, or I'm not doing anything, I don't feel productive, I don't feel like I've done anything.
Not making the sponsors happy. And
I mean, yeah, maybe that's for some. I personally haven't found that, but I think for me it's maybe just thinking about how I feel and I don't feel productive or I don't feel like I'm doing anything. But having the ability to just see Instagram or see social media and what's going on there, and be able to say to myself, okay, whatever everyone else is doing, it doesn't really matter. It's about what I'm doing. That's tough, but I think you have to work on trying to do that. For me, at least, rather than stepping away from it. Pressure from or like being at a crag with other people. That's again something you have to get used to.
Yeah.
But I also think that's a lot of the time something you can control.
especially now as well, because climbing is getting very popular now.
Yeah,
especially the outdoor space.
Yeah, I mean,
You have to just accept that it is going to be busy in places.
I think you have to accept, if you want to do a popular boulder, you have to be willing to be climbing with other people. There's no point me bitching and moaning that there's 20 people at Dreamtime when I want to do Dreamtime.
Yeah.
You got to make a choice. Either I want to do it and I'm happy with just climbing.
There are also 20 other
in front
people
of 20
who want
people.
to do Dreamtime
Exactly.
as well,
Yeah. I think if you don't. I mean, certainly some people just don't like climbing in front of. I don't really know that many people who like climbing in front of 10, 15 people. But I think if you like climbing on your own, you climb really well on your own, try and facilitate that. If you can go climbing in the night, go climbing in the night. Or if you can go to a really popular crag at and sociable hours, then do that. I don't think you necessarily have to get good at climbing in front of other people. But I do think it helps because a lot of the time you're forced into it. What was the other part of that question? There was something about climbing in front of other people.
How do you handle external pressure like social media, filming sends, or climbing in front of peers and stay focused on the climb itself?
Filming sends is a tricky one.
Well, I was going to talk about the other one. What was the other one?
Social media.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Like, with social media, you just, like, I struggle with it sometimes. And it's easy to fall into the trap that we all fall into of, like, no, I'm not sending, I'm not posting. I mean, at least for me, sometimes I could feel like, oh, am I making sponsors happy? It's like, but if you think of it, everyone falls into that bubble. Everyone ends up in that little trap at some point where, you can't just be climbing the mountain constantly, you have to come down it at some point.
Yeah.
And that's the same for everyone. And I know so many people who are like at the top for a bit and then they come back down. And that come back down is important to understand, because when it comes to social media, just because you see someone posting a lot and they're doing really well, that doesn't mean that they've been doing well for the last 10 years constantly. That just means that they're doing really well right now. Yeah. And they're hitting a peak at the minute.
You're only ever seeing a snapshot, aren't you? Yeah. You're just seeing, a highlight reel. You're just seeing people's highlight reel. And I think it's very easy to forget that when you're not having your moment. Yeah.
And you just want to have your moment because you're being impatient or you want to feel what they're feeling. Yeah. But it's not really about them. It's about you. You know?
I think I've found that I have to be willing to, I'd be lying if I didn't say that you get not necessarily jealousy. I mean, maybe you can call it jealousy, where you see other people doing stuff and you're like, oh man, I wish I was doing something. I wish I was there, or I wish I was doing this or that. But I think if you're more willing to say, wow, good effort on them.
Yeah.
Like, well done. They obviously had to put a lot of work in to do that.
And this is their moment, not yours.
Yes, is their moment to enjoy that and then use that to say, right, okay, I'm going to keep putting the work in that I need to put in to be able to have a moment like that myself. I think filming sends is actually a tricky one.
I know a lot of people who struggle with this.
What?
I mean, I know my best friend struggles with this.
What, having
Like
being filmed whilst
putting
doing something?
Either someone filming him or filming them while they're climbing, or like him putting the camera down.
Puts
to
pressure
film.
on.
Yeah, it just puts pressure on, and it's like,
yeah.
Like I know someone I worked with as well who was talking about it recently about like, am I filming this for myself or am I filming this for social media?
Mm.
And it's that type of pressure as well, you know.
Mm.
And he was talking about how he didn't like that.
Yeah.
I couldn't care about the video, to
Right.
be honest. I just like having it to look back on. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I just see it as like, oh, I want to remember this. As I'm going to remember it in my brain, but I also want to look back in 2 years' time when I'm going through another dip in life of like injuries and other things. I can look back on the video and goes, that was a good time.
I did this or that.
I did
and
that.
the next
I
time. Yeah,
had a good time. I remember being on top of that boulder crying or shouting, and it's nice to look back, and
Yeah.
I think that's what it should be about rather than like, oh.
Yeah, I think you can be filming stuff for your own, for yourself, and not necessarily to put stuff on social media. A lot of the stuff, like the videos of stuff that I have got, isn't actually on Instagram or whatever. But I think I can understand people feeling the pressure to when they're being filmed or filming themselves. Because a lot of the time you only put the camera on when you're close to doing something, and you feel like that adds the pressure.
But that's why I think you should put the camera on and
More of
record
the time.
yourself.
Yeah,
and
I
record
agree.
you falling off and record yourself,
Because
then
it kind of normalizes it. It's just
you're just
what you
doing
do.
it.
Yeah.
And then you could just put it on thinking, oh, I'm just gonna have a go, and then you could just do it.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel that pressure then of like, oh, I'm just putting it on for the scent. Just put it on for everything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I helped like my friend with as well. It's just like,
The more you put it on, the easier
just put it
gets.
on with like when you just try and moves, like analyze what you're doing, and then that analyzation then will help you with like when you want to send and you want to put the camera on.
Yeah.
To like remember.
Yeah.
It.
And I think actually a lot of the time I love the same as you. I love looking back on old videos of doing stuff, and actually the reason I try and force myself to film a bit more now is because when I look back to some of my best moments in climbing, they weren't on film. And I'm gutted they weren't.
Yeah.
So I try and force myself now. I'm thinking like, I missed not having this on film or that on film, and all I've got still is the memory of those days. And I love having.
And even though like the
video.
memory is like there, and I can like, for me personally, I can think back and I can get back to every single memory quite easily of what happened, who was there, how I did what. Like, it's still nice to just see it, because like when I did Jack's Broken Heart in Magic Wood, I'll be honest, I was in complete flow. I don't even remember going from the top, the bottom to the top.
Did you have a video though?
Yeah, I had a video of it. So it was actually quite nice, because at the time I don't even remember doing the moves. I just remember getting to the top and screaming my head off.
The problem is I find sometimes I have like that memory over time does fade.
Yeah.
Like there are certain days that you'll kind of, I guess, never forget, but there's some that little bits of them start to fade, and instead of being left with like 5 little pictures in your mind of a day, you're left with like 1 or 2.
Yeah. And it's because you just got like new ones now. You've got new ones that you care more about, or you know, you have new memories with different people who maybe had a better time with, or whatever. You just have different new memories to think about.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you feel a social pressure to have videos to prove you've done it?
We're not bullshitters, so
No, yeah.
I don't feel that.
I don't bullshit, so...
No, I think... I don't know. I certainly don't feel like any pressure from social media to have a video of anything I've done. I think I've got a video or a witness of everything that I've done that's 8B plus or above. Still, I think if I was on my own, I would want to have a video of something at or near my limit. But I certainly wouldn't feel like if I didn't have a video that I couldn't still claim what I'd done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for
so I
me,
think-
definitely not. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I've established myself enough by climbing with enough people who have seen me climb and know that I don't bullshit. And I never, like, what's the point? I've actually called people out for bullshitting about climbs. Well, that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But I think that, you know, it's ingenuous to lie about sends, especially when you could be taking opportunities away from other people. That's my opinion, anyway, at least.
Yeah.
So, don't lie, people.
What's your approach to plateaus? Not just in terms of training, but mentally dealing with long stretches without measurable improvement.
Kind of answered that question.
Yeah.
I think, of like when we were saying about, you know, having those periods where you don't do anything and the effect that maybe social media has on that. I mean, not necessarily.
But you can also, like, you know, plateau is a weird one to me because I agree with it and I also don't agree with it. Because you can always find marginal gains even when you are hitting a plateau status.
Yeah, I think as long as you're looking at some part of your climbing and trying to improve it,
Yeah.
you're probably never fully plateauing. Your grade may plateau.
Yeah.
But I think if you are constantly saying, okay, what's this low-hanging fruit? What's this one little weak area of my climbing that I can improve? Then you're never fully plateauing in that you're always improving little areas of your climbing. So.
And I think that a lot more people plateau because they're not willing to put in the work on things that they don't want to work on.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they plateau, and not because they're weak or because they're not skilled, or maybe they are not skilled enough. Maybe they need to work on this skill a bit more. But are they willing to put in the effort and put in the time to do that?
I think it's quite easy to convince yourself that all of your problems are down to one or two things, when actually they're probably not.
People would probably think that I've plateaued the last 2 years because I haven't climbed harder than 8A plus, but I don't see it as that. I've actually improved more than I've ever improved in climbing at the minute. Okay, yeah, it doesn't show it on paper and what I'm climbing, but I still think that I've improved drastically.
Yeah, you've added a lot of tools to your game that
Yeah.
you didn't have 2 years ago. You know, 2 years ago you were much more specialized. You know, how many different 8As could you do? Maybe like a couple. Now I think you could do a far bigger range of 8As. So.
And you know that's not. And I thought about that. I was like, oh, I probably plateauing, but you know you still have to grind. You still just got to get on with it. You still got to find new ways to like not make it feel like it's a plateau, and just like. The time will come at some point, and you have to be ready for it. If you're not ready for it, you're going to keep plateauing, and that's the idea, you know. You just got to be there, waiting for it when it decides to stop.
Yeah.
Nice.
Are there any overlooked aspects of recovery, like nutrition, mental rest, or nervous system management, that you now prioritize more than earlier in your career?
You're asking...
You're asking the worst person in the world this question.
Mr. Chocolate Puff for breakfast.
Oh man, I probably got the worst diet.
Yeah, he's got the worst diet of
to be fair though,
any climber I've ever met.
Is a lot better now than it was.
Better than it used to
3
be.
or 4 years ago. You know, I struggle to eat normal foods, so I have to work around it somehow. And I have addictions that I have to deal with. You know, sugar addiction and stuff. That I deal with. That's hard, and I do feel like sometimes my performance does falter because of it.
Yeah, I think recovery is another one of those things. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're missing out on by whether it's sleeping more or eating the right kind of foods or making sure you get recovery pretty quickly after a session. I think those are those are the key things, aren't they, that everyone talks about is nutrition, diet, and sleep, and rest. I think maybe.
And I don't sleep as much as I should either.
Sleep's a big one. If you can, I think I've noticed big improvements in my recovery, my mental state, my mood from when I sleep better, and trying to get better sleep has had like a pretty direct correlation to my recovery. It's not always easy, is it? If you're having longer days, or I don't know, maybe you're stressed about stuff, it's harder to sleep.
I also just think that it is important, but like people have to just like for me myself, like with mental health issues and stuff that I deal with, it's like it is generically hard for me to sleep sometimes. Like it's not that I want to go to bed at like 2 a.m. Do you know what I mean?
You
It's
just
like,
find it hard to actually go to
I
sleep.
just find it hard to shut off and
Yeah,
actually like go to sleep without my mind running a million miles per hour.
And then I think it's trying to find mechanisms to change that,
Yeah.
isn't it? And you know,
Whether
I
that's
guess
diet or
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 just something you have to
turn
address.
off your
or-
phone or
turn phone off earlier or
Yeah.
whatever it is. I think those are I think diet, sleep are the main things for trying to optimize recovery. At least for me.
and as well like with recovery you have to accept that like when your body says no, say no.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to the like it's all good well and good like being consistent and just showing up to show up, but like if your body is telling you no,
Listen.
say no. Just stop.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've learned
Yeah.
for the last 2 years. Like I just took 3 days off of climbing because of my finger was still feeling a bit iffy, and now my finger feels like 90% better than it did. You know, it's like just listen to your body's telling you these things.
Yeah.
Just listen to it.
It's very easy to plod through stuff like injuries or poor shape, thinking, if I just train that bit harder, it'll be good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just doing the opposite. You know, like training really hard, trying really hard, body's not loving it. Do the opposite, rest loads, see what happens. Change something.
Yeah.
So
Go to spas.
go to
Go to
spas,
expensive spas in
ones
Switzerland.
preferably. Yeah.
How do you adapt your training and climbing style to different types of rock, e.g. granite versus sandstone versus limestone?
He doesn't. He doesn't adapt his training style to different types of rock. No, I think
I personally I spend all year round working on every style.
Well, I think it depends where you climb on, doesn't it? I think if if you live in an area that has sandstone, I think you get very good at sandstone. Okay, maybe you spend your time then climbing indoors on more board style, granite, limestone kind of boulders to maybe balance that out a bit to build more strength. I think generally on sandstone is more technical, isn't it? And you're not going to be as gymnastic. You're not going to be on steep ground as much. Obviously, depending on the sandstone, but generally sandstone, lesser angled slab, vert, slightly overhanging stuff.
But you can put yourself in a better position if you round your tools off a lot better.
Yeah.
Um,
If you're good on all styles,
Yeah.
then you're going to have a generally better time on different rock types. I think thinking about grip is important. I think on sandstone you end up open handing holds a lot more. You tend up on like slopey features. Use the thumb, I think, a lot more on a lot of sandstone. But
bruise
then,
your skin more.
yeah, with acid limestone, I think a lot of time you find weird little thumb catches. Granite can be this kind of halfway house. So
And I think for us, we're just used to limestone because it is like
yeah,
85% of where we
of
are.
what we've got. Yeah, and then I think the climbing that you may do, I think it's why a lot of British climbers tend to do better than in places like Magic Wood or Rocklands or whatever, because we've spent more time climbing on boards or climbing on limestone on really ratty holes. But yeah, I think it comes back again to like thinking about the demands of the rock type that you're going to climb on. There's no point in us training specifically for sandstone, considering we climb on it so little. Okay, you might want to go to Font and you might want to climb Karma or Duel or something, and then you have to say, I need to train more specifically for those.
Like
But
your
I think
feet and stuff, and like standing on small loads. And
but I think if you're going to go to like a general area, you're going to go to like a Magic Wood or a Ticino or to Rocklands or to some of these kind of more basic areas, you can do a lot just by climbing on a board.
on a board, yeah.
Yeah,
And
is the reality.
and also like varying the board that you're climbing on as well, not just
Yeah, for
climbing
sure.
on the same one constantly. Like I've fallen into that trap of just climbing on the kilter board because it's like a style that I struggle with. But like now I've opened up my game and I go climb on the moon board, I go climb on the kilter board. There's going to be a tension board in Swansea soon, so I'll go climb on that. It's just go into different places and climbing on different boards, like climbing on your board as well,
Yeah.
which is the hardest board in the world. I've
Yeah, I
climbed
mean,
on.
my climbing leveled up loads just from climbing on on the same holes I was climbing on at 40, suddenly then climbing on them at 50, just because there was so much more tension involved and it was so much harder to keep the feet on.
And your footholds are terrible on your board.
Yeah, I think would it be nice right now maybe to have access to something that was like 30 to get better on like really small feet, most sloping holds or really small holds and longer moves. I think that would be pretty useful, but again, it kind of depends what you're training for. Like, I think there's... Yeah, I agree completely. It's useful to, especially with boards, think about different angles and different styles of boards, not just climbing constantly on the same board.
And also as well, like, if you go into the gym and you like climbing at 50, but your body's not feeling like climbing at 50, well, don't climb at 50.
Yeah.
Climb at 35, climb at 40.
Yeah.
Adapt with your body. You know?
Yeah.
Do you have any drills or exercises you swear by for improving technique or movement efficiency?
No. Next
Yes,
question.
I do.
Go on then, let's hear it.
Mine is much more of a simple one, and it's what I drill into people, to be honest. Like, when I'm teaching them, it's like, if you're trying to learn a new technique, why are you trying to do it on a hard boulder? Like, why don't you do it on a much lower level? Why are you not doing it on like a VB or a V0? Something that's so simple and, you know, that you can easily do, or, you know, relatively easily do. Just practice what you're doing on lower stuff. Get the movement right, and then worry about doing on the harder stuff. I wouldn't go straight into a hard boulder and try and learn how to do that movement off that boulder. I would start low. Like, I used to be really bad at full crimping. Now, I don't always recommend this, but, you know, you can quite easily go onto a VB, grab the jug, go into a full crimp very slowly, without putting much pressure on your fingers. And that's a very low-level way of learning a new skill without actually doing it on a tiny edge.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy just to jump in the deep end, isn't it, and try and learn a new skill on something that's physically really challenging for you, or mentally, or both really challenging for you. Being able to do it on easier stuff, I think, is pretty important, and to be able to actually scale it up.
And also as well, like, the thing that I hone in is that when I am climbing on lower grade stuff, I'm not just trying to skip half the holds. Like, I think this is a really, really important one, and I think people gloss over this quite a lot. And they do it because they think because it's easy. They're like, oh well, I can just skip all the holds. But I think what you're setting up inside your brain is that you're not actually doing what am I trying to say? Like, you're not trying to do what the problem is. So then when you get on the harder ones, you're then going to have the mindset, oh, I can just skip holes, I can just do this. You're putting yourself into a worse headspace.
Yeah.
So always climb the problems how they're meant to be climbed. It's always good to be different and change them and have different gear.
But use problems as training and do them in particular ways, for sure. But
just don't skip holds, and, like, if you're warming up, climb the boulder how it's meant to be climbed.
Yeah.
You're warming up, you're not meant to be
I agree.
halfway up the wall in 2 seconds.
Yeah. All right, give us a good answer, son.
If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice to progress faster in bouldering, what would it be?
God, I'm going to go back far.
Yeah, you don't.
You got to go back far, mate.
Yeah.
I'm only going to go back 4 years.
I think for me, to progress faster, is that what it said?
That's what it says. Yeah.
Progress faster.
Cliche one.
I think for me it would be to bring more intention to my climbing earlier. I think to think more about the demands of the boulders I want to do, and to ask myself how I can use all of my climbing to climb in that particular way. Obviously, if it's a really specific, I think it's quite easy to get wrapped up in if you just climb in one particular style, you only get good in that particular style. Look at some of the best climbers in the world, and they shoehorn boulders into their style. Yeah. They don't climb, you don't see Aidan Roberts climb a really dynamic boulder in Jimmy Webb style. He still climbs in his style.
Yeah.
I think if you really, really refine, I think if you make your style reasonably broad or reasonably useful, you can apply it to a lot of different boulders. I think if you're strong, extended, and you're strong at like full range of extension on most moves, I think you can benefit so much from that, and you can transfer that to so many different boulders. I think that's the main thing I would say to myself 10, 15 years ago, is to get used to climbing at full extension, get used to climbing really, really open, and get used to climbing on a range of holes. I think that would be the big thing that I would say to myself 10 years
And that
ago.
probably just goes back to what we said earlier about climbing on different boards. That'll give you like
Yeah.
a higher variety of like handholds that you're climbing on, footholds that you're standing on. You know, being more stretched out. I know the kilter board makes me a lot more stretched out than say the moon board does. But I am going to go back very far compared to you, so it's a bit of a harder question for me to answer. But but what I would tell myself is, I don't know, just mine's more of a cliche one, I guess. But it's just like go easy on yourself. Like, it's like the thing we talked about earlier is like, as soon as you've done a boulder, you just move on to the next one after like a day of like enjoying it. Just enjoy the boulder, enjoy it for what it is. And now, like these days, I tend to like, I'll sit on top of the boulder for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'll be at the boulder for longer than I used to be. I would just be done and leave. Whereas now I'll just be there, watch everyone else climb on it, embrace it a bit more.
Yeah.
I guess mine is just a bit more cliche than.
But it makes sense. Yeah.
Like just enjoy it a bit more. It's like.
Yeah. It's very easy not to.
'Cause
when we get wrapped up in wanting to do X, Y, and Z, it's pretty easy to not enjoy it. So.
And enjoy the highs when they're high, and enjoy the lows when they're low, because
It's quite hard to enjoy the lows.
It is, but like.
Find some kind of
joy out of it.
Yeah. Or for me, it's usually finding, okay, I can't do this at the moment. What can I do?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it's usually trying to think about being productive. I can't do this, but I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm good at this and I can't do it. I'm weak at that. I can't do it. I'm going to try and do that.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe another thing that I would say to myself from like 10, 15 years ago is to try and develop different parts of my climbing more quickly by exposing myself to them or training them or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think for me, I did that anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
and you were lucky. You were exposed to
I had really good people in my life who told me to do it. I would consider myself like, okay, genetics and everything else aside, like I got kind of lucky with the people who, well, I wouldn't say lucky. I'm probably a nice guy to be around sometimes. So maybe not luck is the right word, but just having people in my life who told me to do this, do that, do this. Focus on your footwork, focus on like different climbing styles and have a broader term. So for me, it's more just of a mental, I wish my mentality was different 4 years ago to what it is now.
And do you think that's changed through having those people around you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And just like experiencing it myself and just like experiencing the person that I have turned into and the person that I changed from that,
Right, okay.
Like I said, in 2023, I talk about it a lot, but it's like a turning point in my life, both mentally, physically, and everything. It hasn't been easy. I've struggled quite a lot, but having the right people in your life to guide you is really important.
Yeah, having a bit of a network, isn't it, or just a bit of a circle of people you can ask questions to or bounce ideas off.
And I won't climb. And that's one thing I would tell myself 2 years ago. Don't climb with people that you don't want to climb with.
Right.
That's really important to me, because you just fall into a trap of being inside your head and doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Which I have done.
Yeah, I think it is easy to do that as well. I found that quite easy, just climb my own.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I find that hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's
Sometimes I
good and
need to
bad for
climb.
different reasons, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes I need to climb with people for psych and
Yeah.
to be like, oh, let's get out.
Yeah.
Whereas like
I've found it can be both. It can be a distraction and it can be a really beneficial thing.
Yeah.
Like you can learn off other people, they can kind of give you ideas, they can share motivation, share psych.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the opposite. I just want to have a session, be able to think much more without having conversations between attempts, and
Yeah.
it kind of depends, doesn't it? It depends a lot of the time on who you're with, the energy of the person you're with, so many
Me.
different things. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the first episode of the podcast. Don't forget to check out StoneLine Climbing and our first course, Mastering Stone. See you guys later.